Good morning, everybody. So nice to see your shining faces today. Some people have hobbies like playing golf or tending to their orchids or playing bridge. One of my hobbies is studying business principles, or I like to say studying business best practices that can form the foundation on which any organization or company can be successful. And I think this is going to make more sense to you as I go along with this presentation. So there's this wonderful book that's just full of these business best practices. And it's called Good to Great: Why Some Companies Make the Leap to Greatness, and also tells why others don't. And one of the reasons that this book has so much credibility with me and thousands of other people is because it's so thoroughly researched. Now, Jim Collins, he wrote the book, but he employed 28 other researchers, and they put in the equivalency of 10.5 years of people labor to come up with the findings. And what they were looking for was what in common all these good to great companies had as far as business best practices. And after combing through thousands of companies, they came up with 11 that passed their standard. And the foundational principle of many that they found that I'm highlighting today is that each one of these companies found an overall core concept that clearly defined what they came together to do. It spoke to what their gift to the world was and the need that they filled. Now, Jim Collins and his team called this the Hedgehog. Why the Hedgehog? Well, as a business personality, the Hedgehog, he is this little creature. He's built low to the ground, but he can do one thing really, really well. And that's he can focus and stick to the core concept till he becomes a great company. Whereas for the unsustained comparison companies they did in the study, which was maybe these companies were great for a little while, but they weren't sustainable, they ascribed the personality of the fox. Now, of course, this is a little bit of a put down to foxes everywhere, but nonetheless, it kind of works. So, a fox as a business personality would tend to chase this business opportunity and have this business concept, but they never stick to that one thing that's going to make them great. Okay, so they advocated to find your hedgehog or your core concept, to ask yourself 3 questions. What are you passionate about? What do you and your team want to get up and stand for every single day? And number 2, what can you be great at? In other words, what do you either have core competency in now, or you can attain core competency in the future? And number 3, what is your economic engine? You have to have an economic engine in order to supply yourself with the necessary cash and resources, and it has to be in line with what you're passionate about and what you also have core competency in. So once you answer these 3 questions, you synthesize that into what is your overall core concept. Okay, so in a minute I'm going to actually give you an example which is going to help with the understanding of one of the good to great companies that used or asked themselves the 3 questions, and they rode their core concept to greatness. But before I do that, there's one important point that will also help you to understand more about the core concept, and it's this. That they found that in the unsustained companies, that a lot of times there was a lot of bravado. But with the good to great companies, it's more like a quiet understanding that just kind of comes to you. And it can have like a ping of truth. It's like a clear, perfectly struck note that just hangs in the air, in the hushed silence of a full auditorium, at the end of a quiet movement of a Mozart piano concerto. I love the line. I wanted to add it. I want to give credit. It came straight out of Good to Great. But what it's saying is that when you grasp your core concept and it has this ping of truth, it's like, oh yeah, this is what we're passionate about. We can be good at this. We can be great at this. And this is the economic engine that's going to tie it all together. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the example of Nucor. Nucor. Now, they weren't always a great company. As a matter of fact, they started out in the 1970s, and they were kind of chasing this idea and that idea until they came upon what their core concept was. And I hope you love this as much as I do. I think this is great. So what Nucor was passionate about was aligning management interest with that of their workers' interest. And they aligned together to produce high-quality, low-cost steel, which of course was their economic engine. And boy, oh boy, were they passionate about it. And man, oh man, did they get ever good at it. So Nucor did what all the good to great companies did, and this is so important to me. They didn't just teach their core ideology at orientation and then just forget about it. They actually integrated at every level of their organization, from the CEO down to the janitor and with the midline workers. So an example at Nucor was that frontline workers didn't actually receive less perks than the execs. They received a little bit more. And there was a policy that for the frontline workers, but not the execs, they would receive $2,000 for 4 years of post-high school education for every one of their children. And there's a great story that illustrates the positive impact that this had on aligning the team and just the whole morale of Nucor. So frontline worker walks into the CEO's office and sits down, and he says, I have 9 children. Are you telling me that you're going to pay me $2,000 per year for trade school, college, whatever, for all 9 of my children? And the CEO responded, and he said, that's exactly what's going to happen here. And the man just sat there and cried. And the CEO later responded. He said, I'll never forget that one incident. In that one moment, it just so captured what we were about at Nucor. So, how well did this work for Nucor? They're today sticking to their core finding and sticking to their core concept. They're now today the number 2 steel producer in all of the United States. They make billions of dollars a year in profit. But for me, more importantly, they have an extremely satisfied workforce. They have something that's going to be sustainable into the future, and they're making lots of money besides. So to me, this is just an exquisite, wonderful example of what can happen if you find your core concept and can stick with it. Okay, so you've been very gracious in listening to me speak about the hedgehog and the core concept. I would love if you would put in your own words what you're doing at this wonderful retreat center, which I know is also a community at Hummingbird. What would you say your core concept is, maybe starting with what you're passionate about?
Well, those of us at Hummingbird, the community's been here almost 17 years, and we've identified that co-creation is what we're passionate about. And we sort of live and sleep and eat it in terms of we remind each other, we talk about what would be the aspect of this conversation that would be co-creative. I think we've gotten really good at it, but it's not something just to arrive at and be good at, because we're identifying that our economic engine is having telecalls and telecourses where we not just talk about this, but have an interactive quality, both in breaking into small groups and having an experience of co-creation rather than just hearing it as a concept. So we're really sharing that, and then the money flows.
All right. Well, that's I love your answer, because it shows that you're doing what all the good to great companies did, which was like Walgreens or Hewlett Packard or Nucor, where they're integrating their core concept at every level of their organization. Thank you so much. So I want to ask one more question, and that is, do you have a question for me, or is there something about what we spoke about today that particularly piqued your interest that you'd like to highlight?
I really appreciate the research and the author of the book pointing out the 11 aspects that are really show the good to great. And I think in terms of Hummingbird as a community and as a with many business aspects, I just love the idea that we could and do look that direction for our future, for a positive outcome. And you know, we are committed to communicating with one another. I think this could take it to a deeper level. So thank you for connecting the Hedgehog concept with Hummingbird.
Yeah, well, it's so evidently part of what all companies do, whether they become conscious of it or not. I think that is one of the gifts of the good to great companies. Yeah. So thank you. Okay, so let's just do a quick review. So when you're looking for your concept, it's important to ask the 3 questions. Passionate about, which you can be good at, or a core competency, and what's your economic engine. And that once you find what your overall core concept is, it's important that you stick with it, that you live it, believe in it. And if you do, you can follow in the footsteps of what all the good to great companies did. And that's, they use this strategy to actualize their mission with mastery. You've been a delightful audience. Thank you so much for coming today.